worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular horror franchises. And today we are talking about Psycho 3 from 1986. And this is a weird one, John.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I mean, obviously, if we're going to talk about it, I'll get to the bottom of this. I swear I'll get to the bottom of this. But like, there's something about this one that was just funny to me. And maybe it was because I felt like we went up in part two. Maybe not up from part one, but like
expectations
higher than I
wise.
expected.
Yeah.
Yes, higher than I expected in part two. And I enjoyed a lot of part three, except for one major bit. And I think I'm more interested in the whole like place where it fell within slasher films is which really influenced it. But I still like a lot of it. But there was a lot that, to quote Gene Siskel, just sort of laid there after a while for me. That's the third act bit, I think.
Yeah, and I think some of it is coming off of too, having like just watched it, is that like some of it's kind of similar. It is definitely more slashery. It is the sleaziest one we've watched yet of the Psycho ones we've watched.
The
sleazier.
part 5.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Which is very funny because Robin from part 5 is in it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
right.
Friday the 13th part 5 is what we're talking about, which is incredibly sleazy. Like the second one was still kind of like thrillery and whodunit, and this one is much more just straight up slashery. Although it's also got some real like noir elements, and you can see just like in the lighting and the way things are done, just the some of the twists have kind of a more noir-y kind of feel to them, which we'll talk about when we get there. But
I'd also argue a little bit giallo.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest giallo guy, but like I definitely saw some of that in there with just the gloved hands and the lighting and like
as soon as the green light hits an owl, I'm like, well, that's Bava. Like that, for right or wrong, that's where my brain goes.
Right, exactly. I think it's also just, as the experiment of this podcast is, watching these things in succession and watching other franchises in succession. And I'm always careful to not say that I dislike certain things. But after you watch like 5 Final Destination movies in a row, you're kind of like, I kind of know what this is.
Yeah.
It's weird when you start with something as classic as Psycho. Your expectations go up after Psycho 2. You get a little confused at 3. I don't know where we're going with 4, but that's obviously for next time. But like there's a little bit more of an emotional differentiation with this one than we've experienced so far.
Yeah, 3 is closer to what I thought 2 was going to be.
More straight up slasher.
Yeah, and it's cheesier in a lot of ways. It's cornier, but I do think for Anthony Perkins, like his first time out directing, not the worst job. And I think particularly like him and the cinematographer Bruce Surtees had some neat stuff going on. I know he was heavily influenced by Blood Simple. He was a big fan of that. Yes. Apparently had the cast watch it. And there's definitely like the shots of them in the car when it's raining out. That's just boom,
of
Blood Simple. But some of the style and feeling of it definitely feels more like that than a Psycho movie.
There was a bit that I read about where the DP, the director of photography, was trying to test Anthony Perkins. And he was just like, so what's the blocking you got for this? And Perkins was basically just like, oh, you mean blocking? This, I will tell you the entire thing. Because Perkins went into this knowing that he really had to shine, especially with somebody like, an experienced DP like he was working with. So yeah, like, a little bit of backstory is that Perkins didn't feel like he was financially compensated enough for part 1 and part 2, A Tale as Old as Time in Hollywood. And he was just like, you know what? Instead of paying me out, if you want me back for part 3, I'm directing it. He had never directed before. And I completely agree with you that if anything, some of his performance, in a weird way, some of the performances didn't ring as true to me. But the technicality worked an awful lot better than I would have expected, which you would not expect. You'd expect a flip for an actor turned director.
Yeah.
The guy knows lighting. I thought it was gorgeous at times. And Jeff Fahey holding 2 lamps during a sex scene, that is that is an image that will be burned on my brain for quite a while.
Yeah,
so,
Jeff Fahey was awakening some things with me I was not comfortable with.
it may have been his Peter Murphy impression,
Might
but
have
you know,
been,
it was just a little bit of that. But yeah, it's like I was simultaneously more impressed and slightly let down on this movie. But I don't. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of that as we discuss. As I texted you, or maybe one of our group chats or whatever, within a minute 45 of this movie, I was like, this has nowhere to go but up. I love this movie already. Whenever there is an extremely Catholic situation going on where somebody dies by hanging or jumping up, like
violently Catholic.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that 1970s Exorcist, Omen, etc. type of thing. And so we do open on a woman, a nun, who's at the top of a bell tower going nuts, and she accidentally pushes off a senior mother nun. I don't know. Who
a nun sergeant.
Yeah, who falls down the bell tower, much like the henchman in Batman 89, and falls to her death at the bottom. But yeah, I started off, I was like, this rules. I'm all for it. And the first line of the movie is,
yeah, and I was like, oh, are we doing like a little like playful Vertigo homage with just some of those shots of the bell tower stuff like that? I was like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Is this whole thing just going to be a pastiche of Hitchcock stuff? But then, yeah, then there's this accidental nun death. And I love because the nun is trying to kill herself. And like all the other nuns are like, hey, don't do it. It's bad. She accidentally kills the other one. And one of the nuns is like, well, you're going to hell now. Right. Okay. Well, why don't you just jump? But might as well jump. But no, she doesn't. She gets, I guess, kicked out.
Right. And also in Catholicism, is it just like if you commit suicide, you go to purgatory? I was not raised Catholic, but
I think it's straight up hell. I think
it's just straight up hell.
I think it's straight up hell.
Okay. Sorry, Catholics.
Yeah. They take her badge in nun. And make her be kick her out, and so like we just kick
her out for a pastoral recharge.
Yeah, she starts walking across the desert, and with this goofy soundtrack that's done by Carter Burwell. Speaking of the Coen brothers, composed for a lot of their stuff. I was shocked when I saw that. Very funny, but
that was one of those names that I knew instantaneously, but I didn't know from where, and I had to IMDb it immediately, and I was like, oh yes, Coen brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few of those people where I was like, oh, when reading about this movie, I was like, wait a minute, I know who that is. Like the body double they use for Diana Scarway. Yep. I was like, oh, wait, oh, now I know who that is. But
what, you know that butt?
I've seen that butt.
Right.
Pausing, enhance. What are you doing in there? It's for the podcast.
Yeah.
No, but I was very surprised by that. And the score for this is generally great. Like I really do like it.
Yes.
There are some odd choices where in the peeping scene where there's the weird, like almost Omen like Catholic chanting where you're like, what is is he conjuring something? What's going on here? But it's still great. Like it's all great. I did enjoy it.
The nun is walking through the desert with a suitcase and comes upon basically Reggie Bannister and the Hemicuda.
Essentially,
it was just like a little bit of a muscle car. And then I was like, oh, the desert landscape makes me think of Phantasm. And then she gets in the car and it's Jeff Fahey who's doing a little bit of his sleazeball Reggie Bannister situation.
He's kind of like the bizarro Reggie Bannister, or like he's the liquid steak to Reggie Bannister's solid snake. Like no, right. Reggie would be the liquid steak because he got all the recessive genes, but Dwayne is because he's all like, hey, ladies. And much more aggressive than Reggie. Reggie just is pathetic.
That's the thing. As much as we make fun of Reggie in those moments, like he's more just. I'm not condoning the Bannister behavior here. I'm just saying like there is a little bit of a difference between his patheticness and the Dwayne Duke aggressiveness.
Yeah, where it's like, well, it's too rainy. Time for sexual assault. That's not a Reggie move,
right? No. He'd suggest they both sleep in the back seat,
right? Yeah. And then see what happens.
See what happens.
Right. Just love, baby. But he picks her up and he's already creepy. His name is Dwayne Duke, which unless you're going to buy moonshine, don't get in a car with a guy named Dwayne Duke.
No. He's got a little bit of early Nick Cage type of feel with his hair and his face a little bit. But yeah, Dwayne Duke is our new, not by any means hero. He's just another guy in this movie. But they drive into the dark and the rain. She falls asleep and he creeps on her a little bit more. And we finally, like, I was just writing as I was watching this, like, can we get out of this scene, please? Yeah. She finally gets out of the car. And he does have an iconic line, which you can decide if you want to cut in here or not.
I do.
Stupid bitch. You could have been coming instead of going.
So, yes, that's one of those awful lines. But, man, this kind of movie, I'm all for it.
Yeah, then so she's left wandering around in the dark. So it goes to the hotel, and we see just some shots of the hotel, and we see the leftover paperback that Mary was reading in part 2, just in the dirt, which I enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. And all these birds eating at this bird feeder, and they start just dropping off one by one, and turns out Norman's poisoning them to stuff them. Dude loves poison.
I like that they took their time a little bit on that, because I was waiting to see what would happen with those, and it's just a small thing, but I was just like, wait, that bird's not moving. Wait, that bird's not, like it allowed it to creep up on you for a second.
I like that. I also like the concept of Norman being a poisoner versus Mother being the more stabby, because like poisoning is so much more of a passive act. It's like, well, I'm gonna put the stuff in there and then like you drink it and whatever.
Sure.
It's not as like immediately violent is coming at you.
Which is, at the end of part 2, he considers poisoning Emma for a second, and then he's just like, nah, I gotta go Mother on you and like hit you with a shovel.
Well, I think he does, because she's coughing, but then he does both. Like he Sure. So again, you got the id, ego, super ego thing, where he's just like, let's split the difference and do both. Why not both? Yeah, and then Norman shows up, starts putting them into bags, and starts doing taxidermy on them, but then starts kind of having flashbacks to Mother and things that have happened.
Doing taxidermy while eating peanut butter crackers, which is a kind of delightful little detail of him just being like a little boy. Not that I haven't eaten peanut butter crackers in my time as an adult man, but it's just a little bit gross while you're stuffing birds too.
Well, this one that just makes me think that this has completely lost, like it's completely diverted from sandwich based entertainment, which is the first two heavily rotated around sandwiches. Not so. I don't think there's a single damn sandwich in this. There's a reference to a hamburger.
Maybe that's what the problem was that I was alluding to earlier. This is a cracker based movie, but if you put 2 crackers together and have peanut butter in the middle, is that a sandwich? I would not consider that a sandwich.
I don't think that's legally.
No, not even a peanut butter sandwich.
No, that's just a treat. No. It's not really a sandwich.
Okay,
you'd have to like append like sandwich cookie, or it's not really a same thing.
Got it. Yeah,
but it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that could be an issue. That it's lack of.
It is an issue.
We don't know people's motivations because there's no sandwiches to be had, and that's what everyone is motivated by in these movies.
There is a severe lack of sandwiches in this movie, and I think you solved it for me early on.
Go back and do the sandwich cut. CG sandwiches.
Yes. And then we can get a bunch of people online screaming for it, and HBO will pay $70 million to redo it.
Release the sandwich cut.
Dwayne Duke pulls up to the Bates Motel looking for a place to stay. He inquires after the help wanted sign. And of course, Norman responds to him, 12 cabins, 12 vacancies. Norman does have blood on his hands here, and he still eats candy corn, offers it to Dwayne Duke, and he takes the job. My first thing about this was, and maybe this is more of like a couple of scenes from now, but I think it's worth mentioning now. I love that Norman fires Dennis Franz in the first film for being sleazy, and yet he immediately hires Dwayne Duke for being kind of sleazy. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to split hairs on sleaziness here, on Toomey's sins versus Dwayne Duke's sins, but a little bit similar guy here.
Yeah, I think it's a bigotry, a hotness bigotry. It's like, well, you seem kind of sleazy, but look at them baby blues, whereas like Dennis Franz is like, you look like you crawled out of a bowling ball return. Like I don't want you anywhere around here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I guess you could say that Dennis Franz was allowing certain clientele, aka people who wanted to have sex in a motel room. Right.
Instead of weirdos still obsessed with high school football 15 years later. Normal people.
God. So strange. So strange. Yes. So down at Statler's, the diner, the workers are still discussing Emma missing, and it seems that it's been about 1 month
just been
since
a month.
the end of Psycho 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yeah.
everyone is like, what I love is just that continued, look, you're fine. We don't have, the state doesn't have money or infrastructure to care about you. Yes, you got released and then people try to drive you crazy and all these murders happen. That's your problem. Hey, welcome to Reagan's America.
That plays into probably my favorite scene in the film later on with the ice bucket. But that same idea. So a woman at the counter says that she drove from California to check in on Norman out of curiosity. And that, like you were saying, the townspeople are very much on Norman's side. And they keep saying 20 years in that big house, he's paid his debt. So I don't know, I'm not saying I have any crimes in my future, but I'd like to surround myself with a caring community that'll just look past anything that I might accidentally do. In the future.
And I'm so glad to see a lot the same actors come back, pretty much, because I really liked the sheriff. But they're very protective of him, and I kind of get it because they were very distrustful, and then it turns out someone was trying to screw him over. Well, that's
true.
terrible. That's we're on his side. It's a little extreme. Yeah, that woman that is driven up, that is Tracy Venable, because it's a very strange last name. We find out because Norman comes in. Norman just fortuitously comes in and is like, oh, hey, I'm going to get a couple of burgers from a new hire and some food for me. And they're all super nice to him. And then she goes and starts bothering him and reveals that she's a reporter for a magazine called Coastal Reports.
Yes.
What kind of magazine do you think Coastal Reports is, with a name like Coastal Reports?
I'm going to say elite lifestyle.
Yeah, that's what I would think. I think shots of beach homes and stuff like that. No, she's writing an article about serial killers and being released back into society.
Good.
Which, I mean, okay. I mean, any more with the popularity of true crime. I like that. That mishmash of lifestyle stuff. Also be very afraid of serial killers combined into one thing.
Yeah, don't give them the code to your gated community to let them in.
Yeah, no Airbnbs for serial killers. But she starts pressing on him, and he's quickly he's super nice, but he's already getting a little agitated. And then he looks out the window. A Marine has arrived via hitchhiking in a truck. And he's already struck by her blondness. And then when she walks by and he sees an MC on her suitcase, her initials, it really sets him off, which I thought was a bit strange in that in the last one, her name is Mary. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Meg Tillis is like, yeah, I guess it's just the blonde thing. Or it could be, that he's extra wobbly because all of what's happened in Psycho 2 and then he's already killed and has mom back, and who knows how that's going? Probably not well.
Right.
Well, who knows? Yeah, it's probably not going well to have a stuffed woman in your house.
I'm sure it's going great.
It's going fine.
Yeah.
I don't want to stereotype everyone that keeps a dead mother stuff in their room.
Exactly.
But he's immediately like, oh, everything's crumbling now because I've seen a blonde woman with similar initials.
I don't know. I had a day like today that I thought everything was crumbling at just something that may not be that big of a deal. I go through those moods.
Right. I am holding on to Sandy by a thread. All it takes is it turns out yellow means go, and I will lose my mind about everything.
Right.
Yeah. So he's fracturing rapidly, and he kind of freaks out and takes off.
With this kind of movie, you always look for the killer or the eccentric person. Where are they going to start? Are they going to start on a scale of 1 to 10? Are they going to start at a 3? Are they going to start at a 5? I think this is extra interesting because it's Norman Bates, the most famous of all of these type of characters. But now Anthony Perkins is directing himself.
Yeah.
So I got this wondering sense early on of just is he going to play it kind of reserved, or is he just going to start chewing scenery immediately? And now that I say that phrase, I don't know if I believe that he's chewing scenery, but I feel like he's more elevated in this one than he was in part 2 and definitely in part 1. He starts at a higher clip at the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, well, I think in part 1 he's a lot more, or I'm sorry, in part 2 he's a little bit more inert because you as the viewer are a little unsure of what his deal is, and there's a lot of stuff happening at him and happening to him. Yeah. Whereas this one he's a bit more involved in all of it from the jump. So you're seeing a little bit more activity from him just because he is more active.
Yeah, and whenever you have a director /star, there's going to be no restraint, because he's the final word on it.
Right.
Whereas part 1 and 2, obviously he had somebody to pull him back if he was getting too high too early.
Right.
So he's just shooting for the moon, kind of out of the game. Okay, so Marion shows up at the Bates Motel, and of course Duke is working. He apologizes for his behavior earlier. Awkward situation.
I was road weary, and so just to keep myself awake, I tried to sexually assault you. You know how it goes.
Just road boners.
Yeah.
It's just like I can't be held accountable. That kind of thing.
It gets hard out here on the road.
I mean, there you go. Yes. Maureen Coyle is her name. She enters the room, cabin 1. And of course, Norman watches her go in and then flips out about cabin number 1.
Goes upstairs to Mother, starts freaking out to Mother about how she's back. How Marion Crane's back because Mother came back. And then Mother's like, no, I never left. And and Amelia, of course, the mom's like, what a whore. What is she? She have hair and clothes? Right. What a whore. And Mom would just be kicking ass on Reddit. Just be a great Reddit person.
Right.
But
and X
and X
these days.
Yeah, big on
X,
she'd have a blue check.
Twitter.
She would pay for a blue check.
Yeah, she'd be blue checked. Yeah.
But but she's also Mother's a little bit weird on this because when he's like, no, like I'm kind of freaked out that she's here, she's back.
If the disgusting little whore is going to upset you so much, just get rid of her.
It doesn't even seem like she's a whore. She's getting too close. She's dividing us. It's like, just get rid of her. At the beginning, it's just like, oh, okay, just extra evil Mother. Sure enough, he goes back and goes to the same painting from part 1. Same people, looks in and sees her undressing. And that's not actually her undressing. The body double is Brink Stevens, who is, you might know from Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers or Sorority Babes and Slimeball Bolorama.
I do.
Horror icon. Oh, also in Death Spa. I'd forgotten about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in tons and tons of stuff. Tourist Trap, Nukem High 2, Frankenhooker. But here, just to fill in for, just a body stand in for Deanna Scarwood, who I have not seen, most known probably for Mommy Dearest, which I have never seen.
Oh, yeah. I've not seen that either, I don't think. Yeah. But know the name, of course.
Yeah.
But okay.
Familiar with like the references from it, but don't know specifically. But anyway, he sees her getting fully undressed. And as far as we know, this is the first time Norman has seen boobs. And
I think so.
Yeah, because he kind of reacts when she takes her bra off, like, that's what those are. You see some footsteps approaching instead of the shower. She's in a bath, but pull back the shower curtain, and Maureen's in the bath, and she slit her wrists.
Yeah,
and
surprising. To me,
unexpected. Sees the towering figure, the dark towering figure of Mother above her, and then through her loss of blood and whatever is going on with her, because she is a mess of problems, sees the Virgin Mary. Instead of seeing Mother, sees the Virgin Mary holding a silver crucifix.
I loved that instead of the knife.
Yeah. This snaps Norman out of his Mother reverie, or as far as we can tell anyway, because next thing we know, she's in the hospital bed, and we find out that Norman has saved her, taken her to the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, that was a jarring scene, to be honest, because of course, as he starts approaching, you were like, how are they going to do their own version of the shower scene, which they sort of do later on. However, like I actually like sat up when I saw that, and just like it was a little bit like legitimately disturbing. It was a twist I didn't see coming, and it was just sad. Too.
Yeah, it was a gross effect, but it was more tragic. You're like, oh, that's awful. Because all we've seen this woman do from the get-go is suffer, and it's just a bummer.
So Catholic.
Yeah. But she's in the hospital, and the sheriff is there congratulating Norman. He's like, hey, you did the right thing, Norman. You're such a good guy. And the reporter is there. Tracy Venable is there.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, I just happened to see the ambulance, and so I followed to see what's going on, and I still don't trust Norman. And Norman goes in to see her, and she thanks him, and they have an awkward conversation, which they will do again and again and again throughout this movie.
Yes. He does say we need to check in on our community, which I'm like, oh, I think about that kind of thing more and more these days. But Maybe not in this context.
Yeah, maybe
so much.
maybe don't bust into people's bathrooms.
Exactly. Yeah. But he does re-say his line from the first.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
So we start to get, more and more of these callbacks to the first film.
And it's because it seems like right out of the gate here, it doesn't seem like the whodunit that 2 was. Because 2 immediately called into question, is this Norman? Because like he's locked in a closet, he's locked in the attic and all this stuff. Whereas this is just very much seems like, no, that was Norman.
Mm-hmm. So Duke is hanging out at a bar in town, and he brings back one of the ladies from the bar to the motel, meets Norman briefly at the ice machine, and then we get the shot that we were referring to earlier where I guess like he and the lady from the bar are about to have sex, but they're both just kind of like writhing around naked on their opposite sides of the hotel. But evidently, Anthony Perkins wanted Jeff Fahey to be nude in this scene, just sitting in the chair. Fahey didn't feel comfortable about that, which is perfectly okay. The solution was to take 2 lamps and hold them at strategic positions over his genitalia and his chest somehow, and wave them back and forth. But I would absolutely argue that is a far more memorable shot than it would have been had it been a nude Jeff Fahey. Yeah. No offense, Jeff Fahey.
Looking great, Jeff Fahey, but it's because it's super weird because she is like ashing a cigarette on her body and being like, ooh, isn't that sexy? And he's just waving these lights at her and then, hey, lick that magazine cutout I've got on my wall. Yeah, that's sexy.
Right.
What? Okay. That's just I don't know what foreplay is apparently.
Right. Well, and some of this lighting, like Fahey just looks like he has eyeliner on. Some of this stuff, like his black hair, like there's that Peter Murphy shot that I was thinking he just looks like he's in a Bauhaus video somehow. Yeah. And I'm just like, good on you, Anthony Perkins. Yeah. Like that's a memorable shot.
It's getting getting weirdly horny. It's not just sex.
There again, I would say, hey, Anthony Perkins, like, don't worry about your lack of technical skill here. Like, you made some gorgeous shots, and this is one of them. So
yeah, get weird.
Get weird.
They start to have sex, and he's like, hey, watch the guitar again. That's a runner through this. Is that Duke is Dwayne Duke is heading to L.A. to become a rock star, and is just
lest we forget,
temporarily stopping by just to get some money. Dreams cost money. And so please don't mess with this guitar. It's the most important thing, which is hilarious because when he's at the bar and he like the bar is like dead quiet and he goes to the jukebox, he plays some like weird disco-y, like this electronic pop thing. Oh, okay. I was waiting for
the shimmy slide.
Yeah, I was waiting for the shimmy slide from Get Even. Yeah.
Oh, you're on fire when I grab you by the hand. Your waist is moving with the rhythm of the band. I swell up as you take me for a ride. Pretty baby, let's do the shimmy slide.
That was his big hit. That would be very funny. Right. Folks, watch Get Even. It's great. Get Even. Champagne and bullets. Oh, well, it's at that same time when he's at the bar that he does try to pick up on Tracy Venable. And nothing against Roberta Maxwell, like her performance is fine. I don't like this character. She's just really kind of off-putting and
don't
mean.
Either.
It seems like a almost approaching something like what Jennifer Jason Leigh is doing in Hudsucker Proxy, back to Coen Brothers, but like doesn't have that like 1940s moxie. It's just you're just kind of mean to people.
and irritating and I need to be heard constantly.
Yeah, and it's I didn't enjoy that much. But she finds out that he works at the Bates Motel, so she's interested in trying to get some information out of him, and she'll pay him for it, which he's curious about. So now we have this alliance against Norman. But back to the post boinging, the post sex.
Yeah. So at this point, Duke kicks her out, practically naked. Tosses her clothes out at her in, just kind of an over-the-top, I'm an asshole type of sequence. She goes to a payphone, realizes for whatever reason that her shirt is inside out. So, of course, what do you do when you're out in public? You take your sweater shirt off and put it back on so you get a little gratuitous nudity in the phone booth. And I honestly didn't see this coming, but Mother comes out of nowhere and stabs her in the phone booth.
I mean, that is, are you nude in public? That's like throwing up the bat signal for mother.
Yes,
She's like, oh, exposed breasts, gotta get them.
Yep.
Which is very extremely slashery for what this has been so far. Like,
Yes.
this is just a random person that is nude, and then like that's bad, so kill them.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's a pretty brutal killing inside that phone booth.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of her like having the sweater up around her face, and I meant to look this up beforehand, but it's reminding me of again this is a sequence that definitely screamed Argento to me, and I feel like there's another sequence in one of his movies. I think it might be Tenebrae or something like that, where like there's a slash across a shirt that exposes a face that a woman is like trying to put on, and then she gets like slashed and stabbed repeatedly.
That sounds familiar.
I'm not the best giallo person. Like I know I've got a ton of holes in my giallo repertoire, but that combined with the light that is going on outside of the phone booth just definitely made me think like, okay, we're getting a little Argento in our Anthony Perkins, which is funny because these things feed in upon themselves. But like Argento liked Hitchcock. De Palma liked Hitchcock and Argento. Like it's all like a big stew at this point. Marion goes to see a father, a priest, and talks about her doubts of the convent. And father explains that God has been, always trying to save her. So I don't know. This is a little bit more the Catholicism being put in here. And usually I like that in horror movies, but this scene didn't like really do much for me at all.
It feels a little tacked on, this whole religious aspect of it. Other than that, you do have this person, this just like messy human being that is like convinced that Mother Mary, like I wasn't so sure before, but Mother Mary saved me, and that's absolutely true. And Norman's great too because he's teaching me about forgiveness. I guess we're not there yet, but that she's like, hey, Norman's a good guy too. I'm feeling really positive about where I'm at, and Preacher's not entirely stoked on it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, and I might try to edit this back in because I think this is where it happens, is when Norman is watching her watching Maureen. He watches her like go in the bathroom, and the way it gets to Norman being in the bathroom is that you see what looks like light coming out of the bottom of the door, and then it ends up being a glint on the edge of a knife. That was so cool. Yeah. Right. And that, like, he does these transitions that made me, and I'm sorry to do this again, made me think of Saw. Darren Lynn Bousman's like weird Donnie Wahlberg sleeping at the crime scene. A little bit later when he walks out of her hospital room into where Mother is. That's like, that worked for me because that's Norman's kind of disjointed mind, and just that was more stylistic and it didn't feel as clumsy. So sorry to bring up Saw yet again, but
two very different locations too.
Yeah, they
for the
looked very different. It wasn't just grungy place A and a grungy place B.
Sure.
But I just wanted to throw that out there before I forgot.
This isn't immediately the drop off point, but this is where I started like going, you had a lot going on for you up until now, and I feel like this is where we can trace where it takes the turn that I'm not as into, because a bunch of college football fans appear at the motel.
Well, high school football fans.
Oh, high school, even worse. Yeah. It's just so confusing because like this is just not. Now, I'm all for like taking characters that wouldn't normally be in your typical location in a third movie. I understand that idea. I was just annoyed watching a bunch of high school football players at this point.
It's not even the players. It's like people that went to high school 15 years ago, but they're still traveling. This is such a huge deal. And I don't know if any listeners are a place where this is, football is life. Because I'm originally from Nebraska, and like Husker football was all we had out there. And then when I moved out to Oregon, I did not realize what a thing it was out here. Now it's on the college level, not high school. This isn't Texas. But like out here, there's one of the big game is Oregon State versus University of Oregon, that people would call the Civil War. I did not know that. I was on a job interview and someone was like, "Who do you like in the Civil War?" And I was like, "The North." I don't. What are you asking here?
Is this a trick?
Yeah, but like it's that important. It's the Civil War. It's dividing houses. It's a football game. But right. Anyway, but yeah, so these are weirdos that are super excited, and they like one of them like rushes the car that Anthony Perkins is in with Maureen.
Fairvale Central, huh? Come on, Fairvale Central, where you from? Fairvale. Oh, too bad, too bad. Hope you don't mind losing.
I do like the idea of people actually being at the motel. That instead of just being like one or two people, that this is now a populated area. What's Norman going to get up to now?
That means lots of cannon fodder, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what these usually mean.
Yeah.
You know, a whole bunch of teens that can come in and get all slashed up for us, but doesn't quite go there.
No, but I do love that a little bit later when it's raining out and like just someone randomly, it ends up being the character Patsy Boyle, but we're introduced, she just like walks past the office where Dwayne is.
Oh, well, they say the wet look is coming back.
And it just felt like, did you like the producer be like, yeah, I'll put you in the pictures, baby. But then it's actually it's actually the director of Poison Ivy, the Drew Barrymore movie.
Oh, good grief!
Yeah, that character is played by Kat Shea. Patsy Boyle is played by Kat Shea, who went on to direct Poison Ivy.
I mean,
among other things.
I think there's multiple movies in the Poison Ivy series. So
there are, yeah.
If we get there. That's
true. She also did the Rage Carrie too.
Yeah. We definitely need to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, while this night is happening, Norman invites Maureen out. They're gonna go like on a date, basically.
On a full-on date. Yeah. They drink wine together. She has never had wine. He says something to the effect of like, mother would never allow wine in the house. His performance is actually pretty good in this scene. Like, I think he's legitimately out of his depth, trying to be charismatic. He's still awkward and goofy. Like, in an isolated sequence, the scene works for me. But I'm still starting to kind of lose interest with this to a degree.
Like, I like this concept, and I like that these two bonkers individuals, like, I want them to work it out, and I want them to get married, just get this union of craziness. And then like, I would watch whatever you wanted to do. I would watch them move in next to Al Bundy. Like, that sounds like an amazing, just to see what kind of nonsense they get up to. Cause she's just a mess. He's his own problem. The whole stuffed mother thing. But it is like, he's trying to like, you get a sense of him struggling to break out of his stuff. Like you're getting the sense that he's really, even though he brought mother back into his life in part 2, he's kind of getting tired of it. And particularly with like, well, if Mary comes back, this is a good thing. This is a way out for me versus just sinking into the shit I've been doing. And I like it.
I mean, mother's cock blocking him at this point. And he's just like, I just want to go out on a date.
Here's a sweet girl who, she's not changing her sweater in a phone booth. She doesn't even know how to dance, and I'm going to show her. And I got a kick out of him showing her how to do the box step, because it made me think of when I was 12. I was in this thing called Cotillion, and it was kind of like, did you do that? Yeah, it was like teaching you.
No, I just watched the Wonder Years when Kevin takes Paul's little sister to the Cotillion dance,
and it's a thing that taught you how to be respectful gentlemen and ladies, and which fork to use and all that, and what how to do dances. And I was dancing with this one girl, and they were teaching us. I don't remember what dance it was, but I was like, oh, this is how a knight moves in chess.
Nerd alert.
Yeah, it was great. She was very nice. She was like,
1 square, up 3.
Yeah, that's great. You've just put off my puberty by 3 years. Thank you so much.
Right. Yeah. They go back to the house on the rainy night. The football fans are still there, causing a ruckus. Marion thinks she sees a woman in the window at the house, and they end up having this like romantic evening together, just like laying there together.
Yeah.
And she is woken up by someone and saying she fell asleep with the door open. So like they're trying to connect here, but it's not quite happening.
Well, and when they start smooching on the bed, you get like Norman's just like, what even is this? Is this right?
Yeah.
He's very like tense and stiff.
Sure.
I'm not making that joke.
You
make that joke yourself, audience.
Yes.
It's the at-home game. And then, then she wakes up and this person is like, hey, I woke you up because your door's open. Just shut the door. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
She's fine.
Don't wake me up.
Yeah. So when she's awake, she's like, oh, well, what the hell happened to Norman? And Norman is having a complete freak out with mom at home.
She's a nice girl.
She's a whore.
But we didn't do anything.
You let her come between us.
But it isn't right. It isn't natural.
It's perfectly natural for a son to love his mother.
God, will you leave me alone, Mother? Will you leave me alone?
It is worth noting in this scene, though, and previously in one of the Mother scenes that, like, in the first movie, and I believe in the second, we just hear Mother off screen. Mm-hmm. In this movie, we are seeing her actually, like, the stuffed body that he is talking to. Yeah. So all the implied Mother nastiness of a dead body, we're actually seeing now in part 3.
Yeah, it's generally like hidden in shadows, but we're getting the full corpse treatment. And they got the same actress to do the voice of mom from the first one.
Oh yes,
which is pretty cool.
Or one of the three or something like that. Yeah. Next line in my note is literally just mother then kills some poor random woman on the toilet. Yep. And I was just like, man, that's a rough way to go. But yes, this is Patsy. This is so slasher movie.
This is extremely slasher movie.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get more 80s slasher than this. Just someone vulnerable on a toilet, not quite Friday the 13th in the porta potty necessarily.
Yeah. No singing.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Yeah, this is a throat slash and a stab in the gut. And there's nothing that elevates this moment from a Psycho film. Yeah. This is pure just 80s trash.
Yeah,
and I love it.
Some character getting murdered. But it is worth noting that is the son of the original toilet. Yeah. Oh, they couldn't get the original toilet back, just all strung out on like he never achieved that fame again. Hit him hard. He got addicted to 2000 flushes. Couldn't give up, but they got his son to do it, which was nice. Nice salute.
Scrubbing bubbles just right up his nose. Just like the way it tickled, but
I got the scrubbing bubbles on my back, man. I can't get them off. Right. But yeah, so it is. It's a salute to the first toilet. No, but it is just this nasty like throat slashing, like the very first Friday the 13th kill, where her head goes back and it opens up, and then stabs to the gut, all this stuff. Again, this random person that mother is just like, I don't know. It's this sexual frustration that it's almost like she wants to kill Maureen, but Norman is like subverting that. So it's like, well, I guess I'll just kill her then.
Kill somebody else, sure.
But yeah, so he kills her, and then she gets shoved into the ice machine.
Setting up for my favorite bit. So more football fans chase women around for a while. Then the cops show up to see Norman, see where Patsy Boyles is. The cops run upstairs to Mother's room, have a look around. There's no Mother. They post up next to the ice machine outside the motel. Norman's sitting there, and man, I love all of Anthony Perkins' face acting in this sequence. Like just watching him from cut to cut is fantastic. But the cop just casually grabs ice out of the ice machine, as you do when you're kind of like in the middle of nowhere, Midwest type of thing. Just grab ice as a drink of water. You can see a little bit of a hand in the machine, but there's also blood in the ice. He puts a couple of cubes in his ice in his mouth. He just keeps grabbing it, and it's he starts sucking on bloody ice with
does not even notice.
This entire time, he's also doing exactly what you were describing earlier, which is like, we're on your side, Norman. I think you're an all right guy. And Norman's just sitting there with like a Joker-like grin on his face, just being like, all right, I'm going to get out of this here. This is pretty funny.
You as the viewer are still like, oh, don't find it. They're going to find it. That tension. It's not like, no, it's right over there. You're hoping he doesn't find it. And it's very darkly funny.
Psycho tension.
How he just lifts up the ice and it's just constantly like from the dead body. He's not even looking.
Yes.
Which, how do you even miss that? Like, it's wide open. The body's right there. But whatever. It was funny.
Whatever.
I enjoyed it because he's yelling at Venable, who is still on the, we got Norman's wild. He's like, hey, leave this guy alone. He's been through enough. We looked through his house. Norman freaks out when they want to look through his house, but they don't find anything, of course.
Right.
Tracy is doing her own investigation. Norman goes to talk to people at the diner, and they're like, where'd Mrs. Spool go? Like, she was here when we got here. We don't know anything about her. And then she finds out, he's like, who might know is the original owner. She goes to find him at a nursing home. And he's like, oh, she was institutionalized for murder. Maureen Tracy finds a newspaper clipping from like the backstory database, whatever, that basically says that it's a twist that undoes the twist of the last one, where it's like, no, she murdered Norma Bates's husband, like Norman's dad, because she loved Norman's dad, and Norma stole her away from Emma and then kidnapped Norman. Norman, of course, doesn't remember any of this, but like kidnapped him for a little bit. And so it was a whole thing. And then she went, so not actually his mom at all. I mean, we knew she was already bonkers because she was stabbing people in the last one, but this was just okay.
Yeah. Twists upon twists, again, coming out of Saw. Yeah. You'd think I'd be inured to this kind of thing, but it's almost like with the Psycho name, you kind of want to believe that it's a little bit like classier than that, even though the end of the first Psycho is a giant twist. Yeah. But at this point, the twists are becoming a little cheap.
It's a little tawdry
in my eyes.
Yeah, it's also just that Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams. I gotta no, that's not the twist. This is the twist. Got to undo that.
Ugh.
But it was just kind of unnecessary. Like it was further convoluting something that was already convoluted to begin with. But okay, I guess if you want to argue that it helps Norman further distance himself from Mother, that like. I mean, we don't, because I don't even know that he ever really knows. Oh, well, yes, he does. That's the whole thing towards the end. But we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a weird twist. But then, so Tracy has this information and wants to share it with Maureen, because should probably mention, Maureen covered up for Norman during the whole interrogation ice eating thing, where she's like, he was with me. We spent the night together.
Oh, right.
And Venable's like, I'm not buying that for a second. So she goes to the priest and is like, hey, look at this. This will probably prove, change your mind. He's like, I guess, I don't know.
Right.
He's like, just all of you, leave me alone. I'm trying to do priest stuff.
Who are you? Just leave.
But, and this is, it kind of, it really starts to kind of fall apart here. Although there's still stuff I like. But Maureen goes to see him, and like, she says something to the effect of like, I'm ready to give my life for you. Like, you're my new Messiah, Norman.
Right.
Man, these two are like just so codependent on one another. It's beautiful.
Totally.
She's at like on top of the staircase. Like
it's the Arbogast treatment.
Yeah, because like Mother shouts or something.
Yeah,
startles him, and he like stops holding her hands, and because they were like sweetly holding hands.
Oh, it's that. It's that. And so like they break like a slight embrace.
Yeah, and she goes hurtling backwards down the stairs for whatever reason. And lands directly, her head lands directly on a Cupid statue that's right there, that's holding a bow.
Right.
It was okay. It was just it was a neat callback to the Arbogast shot, but it was okay. That seemed rather convenient. And
again, that's where nothing happens with that. It's just like a bad accident that happens. Yeah. You could argue, I suppose, that Mother startles him, and maybe it was almost like a not sacrifice, but he did it to himself a little bit.
Yeah.
You could argue maybe, but like, I don't know. None of this worked for me, and none of this, like, it was exciting after they had like their romantic interlude and all of that. Yeah. Like, that's just where things just ground to a halt for me.
It didn't have the tragic, it wanted to, but it didn't have the tragic nature of Mary's death, where it's like, oh, like, you poor child, you were caught up in all this and you're trying to make things better. This was just a whoops. And whoop, son of a, and then you're down the stairs and you're gone. This activates Super Saiyan Norman.
Now, before we forget, Dwayne Duke, we skipped over.
Oh, did that already happen?
Yeah, Dwayne Duke is in there. He's singing in a really funny lighting setup and watching Woody Woodpecker, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, because Norman gets a note at the house that like, his mother's gone. And he gets a note that's like, hey, I'm in cabin 12. Come get me, Mother. Yeah. And he gets there. Yeah. And it's all creepily lit in there. And it's Duke singing a song, like singing a creepy song, and all sweaty and mostly nude. And I was like, oh, yeah, he did a great job in there with Norman. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where it gets a little noir, where his his solution isn't like, oh my God, I'm going to turn you into the police. This is bad. It's like, I'm going to extort you. This is a noir kind of twist of just like,
right.
No, I'm going to extort you for personal gain.
Don't cry poor to me, Norman. With that big piece of real estate up in the hill and this thriving business, why, if things got tight, you could just sell an acre.
I like that he calls the hotel successful, which it's not. There's 1 week in a year it does okay. That's all we know about it. But he's like, yeah, you have all this property. Sell some of it. Give me some money. That's it. And then they have a fight, and he kills Dwayne Duke. Because Dwayne Duke's also like, I can't just tell the newspaper lady because she's just going to sell ad and it's going to be her story. I'm not going to see anything out of it. And so I like that, but at the same time, it does feel a little like that should have happened earlier or something.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I know it's supposed to be Norman kind of cracking, because as he's walking to the room, like he's walking through all this debris from the homecoming revelry, and like, yeah, you can hear weird cartoons during that. So it seems like it's a sandy breaking. But just like that is an interesting plot line that is kind of quickly that like Mother's gone and here's someone that's kind of holding her for ransom, and I know like knows what I know or something, that's just kind of dispatched really quickly. And it also it didn't really have the, like I said before, it didn't really have the whodunit nature of like, oh, maybe it was Dwayne Duke this whole time. Like, no, you kind of had a pretty good idea that it was Norman, or at least I don't know. I didn't really question whether it was going to be like, oh, turns out Dwayne was killing people.
Right, dressed up as Mother. Yeah. The scene does end with a cute touch where it zooms in on Mother's hand in the rocking chair, and it's just a finger pointing. Yeah. It's just like Norman is always getting dressed down by his mother, the police chief, to put it in my terms, just like it's always a finger, pointing. Yeah. And at that point, Norman beats Duke with the guitar.
Duke's guitar.
Yeah, and yells that Mother is making him do it, and tries to hide the body in the car trunk. And of course, Norman drives to the swamp, and they have a little bit of a struggle though, because like Duke also like tries to, like, he comes to and like strangles Norman at the end there. Like, I was a little bit confused right there. I think it was like the lighting of the shot.
Yeah, some of the geometry felt a little strange, but
Yeah, exactly. Geography. So geography. And then we put Duke in the swamp where he belongs.
And Norman goes in the swamp too. And I like that, where he's confronted with, he's trying to escape from there. He could die. And then he's confronted with Red's body down there, and he screams. So there's nothing confronted of the facts of what he's done as Mother, which I think is, again, it's an interesting concept, but it doesn't play very well. Because it's also, how are you seeing that in the middle of the swamp at night? Whatever, it's a movie. Yeah, it's fine.
Whatever.
But
car lights. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I like that this movie. I like the idea that this movie has of focusing on like what's compelling Norman to do these things, rather than just being acted upon. Is that like you seeing him like trying to fight against like these compulsions that he has, or whatever. It's a lot more sort of personal to Norman, which makes sense. It being Anthony Perkins directing it and all, but it doesn't have the oomph that I think that would bring with it.
Yeah.
No, he's pissed now, and that's when he goes back to meet Maureen at the house. Yeah, after she's dead, Tracy tries to show up to talk to Norman about his family history.
Yep.
Sees the dead Maureen.
She hears Mother yelling too, right? At this point, which at first I found odd, and then I remembered, well, Marion heard that in part one as well.
Yeah.
And so, like that threw me for a second. And then I remember that is consistent, that other characters can hear Norman's mother. I don't know how that physically works, but who cares?
Yeah. Because when she turns around, and he's got this he's very Bob from Twin Peaks expression of just that like deranged, that horrible smile. And he says something in Mother's voice. Starts chasing around the house. She tries to get out the front door, and she can't for some reason. And then he's chasing around, and finally she's explaining, rather than trying to dress up his mother, she's just trying to explain everything that happened, that Mrs. Spool wasn't actually your mother's still dead, all the stuff. Ends up going to the bedroom. And I do like this scene where it's like super dark in there, and she finds the corpse in there, but she can't really figure out where Norman is in the room, which like again made me think of Blood Simple a bit, but it was still great. And then finally Norman breaks, knife comes up, stabs the mummy, and ends up cutting off her head. He's had it.
Yes. And goes nuts on the mummy's body. Sawdust going everywhere because, as we've seen before, he likes to taxidermy stuff. So he's taxidermied mom and put sawdust in her. So like there are shots where clearly they're trying to mirror like blood spray with sawdust spray coming out, which is kind of clever. But yeah, we get to see Norman just go ham on his mom with a knife, which is kind of fun. You know, it took him 3 movies to get to that point. Police arrest Norman. They're like shocked. This counterfeit jeans operation was running out of this car hole, but they're just like, why is we thought Norman was okay. I'm shocked, but
it seems like he's at peace with this. He's like,
good God, son, you'll never get out again. They're gonna have you locked up forever.
But I'll be free. I'll finally be free.
Okay, but guess what? Like, I don't have to have mother yelling at me anymore.
Which is funny considering the end of the last movie, he wanted to get there again, but whatever. I guess he's growing now. So he rides to the police station and he pulls out mother's severed hand and strokes the hand, which I don't know how he got the hand and not patted down, but okay, fine, creepy, whatever. And then I did like this shot because obviously they're going for the final shot of the first Psycho, but I like what they did with the lighting in the back of the car. Yeah. And they fade it to black. They do something completely different with the lighting. And then he stares into the camera and smiles.
Yeah, it's just him. He's now just removed from the background. He's removed from the world around him, and it's just him. Now, I had read somewhere that this was that like the studio wanted this, that the studio wanted like an additional twist, which would make sense because it doesn't make any sense for him to be like, I'm finally free. Or am I? Because I get that he can't escape from mother, that this is within him, but like, then it takes whatever that was supposed to be in like a scene ago and just tosses it out the window. If it was something where it's like, or am I, where this is fully like, no, I'm not. I didn't like that as much. But yeah, so he pulls out this fake hand, starts struggling. But like, I'm with you where I do like the lighting choice here for the ending. I thought that was pretty creepy.
Photography is great.
For a moment, it made me stop thinking about how dumb that was, but it was cool.
Sure. Yeah. Let's just get to it and honor our dead, as that is the end of this film. Sister Margaret, played by Patience Cleveland, pushed off of bell tower. Red, played by Juliet Cummins, stabbed by Norman Bates as mother. Patsy Boyle, played by Kat Shea, throat slit, stabbed in stomach. Dwayne Duke, played by Jeff Fahey, beaten by guitar, drowned in swamp. Maureen Coyle, played by Diana Scarwide, fell downstairs impaled on statue. So yeah, we end up in a different place than we ended up in the second film. The funny thing is, like, I really love the ending of the second film. Yeah. Did I want that repeated? Not necessarily, but you need to go somewhere else with it. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to want to watch this one again in like a couple of years, maybe. And just kind of, there's so much that I liked about it, but there's just some underlying thing that doesn't work for me at times. And I think it's just that third act that falls flat for me with the relationship between Norman and Marion. But there's so much that I did like in this, and I liked it more than I thought I would. Yeah,
so, I still
don't know what it is.
I still liked it more than I thought I would. But it's, and forgive the pun, but like it's so much less psychodrama and just slasher. Which is a little bit less interesting for this series.
For the series, correct. But befitting of the time of the slasher, even though this was 1986.
86. So it's. They were like in a downturn of slashers. It got me thinking because like the second one is all about people trying to drive Norman nuts, which is the plot line of Les Diaboliques, which was an influence on Hitchcock for the first one. So I thought it was kind of neat they went back that way, and it's that. But this one is just it is much more kind of tawdry or it's much more sleazy and just here's some stabbing and stuff like that. And then we're gonna throw some mumbo jumbo at you, but it just didn't have the same character and emotional weight. And I think people do a good job. Like I said, I think Perkins is good in this, and I like what he tries to do with Norman. I just don't think the script it didn't have other people involved as much. It just kind of felt like there were other movies happening, and then Norman just kind of wandered into them a bit.
I keep wanting to check myself a little bit when I think of Psycho as being the brainy masterpiece that it is, and then this being tawdry slasher horror, because Hitchcock wanted to make a tawdry slasher horror when he made the first Psycho. And like, it's just so happens that he was, a master of his craft, that I'm not going to use the E word that elevated the material, but like, I would argue that I would bet that Hitchcock might like some of these trashy movies because that's what he wanted to do with Psycho. So like, I struggle with putting the first Psycho on such a pedestal above other tawdry 80s movies because it's his version of that. Yeah,
it's what boundaries could you push in 1960 versus what you could do in the 80s. And
and just Hitchcock's attitude. Right. He's just like, I'm going to put a naked woman in a shower and I'm going to stab her.
Yeah. But I do think it would perhaps be slightly more artfully done. I guess you could argue. But I fully agree with what you're saying that it doesn't. So it's not like, it's not a betrayal of what came before.
There you go.
It's just not. Yeah. It just doesn't have the underpinning that the other ones had that I would have liked.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, not a betrayal. It's just not as expertly done, but Hitchcock would still rub his hands together and be like, who else are we going to murder today?
You got boobs, you got toilet. What else do you need?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this series continues to surprise me as I hoped it would, actually. So, kind of went into it not knowing where it would take me, but like kind of sort of knowing the reputation that like people I trust like these movies. So, I'm pleasantly surprised that I still liked a lot in this one. And I would jump back into this one in a couple of years to just kind of rewatch it and be like, are those things that I disliked that bad?
Yeah.
I would give it another shot.
Yeah, I didn't love it, but I'm not bummed I watched it. It's fine.
So we've got part 4, directed by Mick Garris. Next Time. I've also never seen this one. I believe it is a little bit of an origin story, if I remember skimming correctly, which never really a fan of, but who knows?
Well, it's also, I mean, that leads me, that makes sense because I was curious about how this, he's in jail. Like, they're not going to let him out again. Are they?
For sure. Right. But when all them liberals are defunding the police, what's going to happen. We're gonna let all the Norman Bateses out there.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into online arguments and bring out like, the police weren't defunded. And then how do you explain Psycho 3?
Exactly. Yes. But no, I'm excited to round that one out, lest we forget the remake, which of course we'll be watching. But so good stuff. I like this one. So, but again, I'm not trying to change how I felt at the beginning of the show, but I do feel like I was more mixed on this one than the previous.
Absolutely,
sequel.
I'm with you that I like the first 2/3 a little bit better than the final third.
Anyway, what is going on at John and Alex Hate Stuff?
Coming up on John and Alex Hate Stuff, we're going to talk about the movie Old, the M. Night Shyamalan thriller from just a couple of years ago. So check that out.
And if you like short, creepy stories, check out Please Leave podcast, where we are posting new short horror stories every week over there and seeing what we can do over there. And everybody, thanks for writing in with all of your comments on Instagram about what you thought of both of the first two. Like I always say, it's super fun when people are watching along with us. Even if you get ahead of us, I still love it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to catch up to what our listeners are seeing out there. That's fun too. And of course, thanks to James Gannon for sketching out a new original drawing for each one of these two. Yeah. That's super
They've been
fun.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And I think that'll do it. So keep those messages coming. If you want to get in touch with us, you can also email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com, and we'll read anything interesting on the air next time. So let us know what you think. If you're new to Psycho, or if like us, you haven't seen these ones before. So always good to hear from everybody. So
yeah, and you can find us on.
We will.
Did you already mention the Instagram thing? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, the Instagram is This May Hurt a Bit, I believe.
Yeah, you can find us there as well.
So, that'll work. So we will see you in 2 weeks for Psycho 4 by Mick Garris. Good night.
Bye.
This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.